We'd like to request everyone to please take their seats. Alrighty. Everyone, thank you so much once again for coming out on this beautiful day for the second annual MIT India Conference. And just so we're all on the same page, this is the governance panel for the next 75 minutes. If you're looking for the cultural panel, it's in the Silverman Skyline room that's across the hall. So I want to set the stage a little bit for what this panel is going, or how this panel is going to occur. So I'm going to introduce the moderator, who will then introduce our exciting panel lineup today. And then each panelist is going to have 5 minutes or so to introduce themselves and to give a brief description about what they do. And then after that, we'll have 20 minutes or so of moderator Q&A, and then we'll open it up to the audience for Q&A for 30 minutes after that. And during the audience Q&A, if people could please step up to the 2 mics here in the center, that would be great. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you the moderator for our panel, Dr. S.P. Kothari. Dr. Kothari is the Deputy Dean of the MIT Sloan School of Management. He has actually had a tremendous list of accomplishments, so I have this piece of paper to list them all. Previously, he has served as Global Head of Equity Research for Barclays Global Investors. He's responsible for supporting Barclays' active equity strategies. Prior to joining Barclays, he was also Deputy Dean at the MIT Sloan School of Management, and earlier he was head of the Department of Economics, Finance, and Accounting at MIT Sloan. He was the Thomas Henry Carroll Ford Visiting Professor of Business Administration at Harvard Business School prior to that. Dr. Kothari received his PhD from the University of Iowa, his MBA from the Indian Institute of Management at Ahmedabad, and his BE from the Birla Institute of Technology and Science in Pilani. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. S.P. Kothari.
Thank you, Shailesh. I'm delighted to be here, and we have a distinguished panel, and the topic is governance. And depending upon who you ask, governance conjures different meaning to them. And we have, from the standpoint of, from the political side, governance as it emanates from that, as well as from the social organizations or corporate setting. So all dimensions of governance are included in the panel discussion today. Let me introduce, and as Shailesh mentioned, the way we will conduct this session is each of the panelists will have about 5 minutes to talk about governance from individually, and then I will moderate some Q&A for 15 to 20 minutes, and then we will have the floor open for Q&A from all of you. Okay. The first speaker, Supriya Sule. She is a member of the parliament, sitting member of the parliament currently. She is a politician, obviously, from the National Congress Party, and currently, as I said, member in the 15th Lok Sabha. She was elected to the Rajya Sabha in September 2006 from Maharashtra, and she is a trustee of the Nehru Center in Mumbai. Okay. So thank you for being here, Supriya Sule. The second panelist to the right is Dr. Surendra Kaushik. He's founder and chairman of Mrs. Helena Kaushik Women's College. He's chairman of the Kaushik Education Foundation in New York and founder of Mrs. Helena Kaushik Women's College in India in 1999. The college is affiliated with the University of Rajasthan. The college has grown on a 30-acre campus with about 1,100 graduates, and they offer degrees of bachelor's in arts, science, and in biotechnology, so on and so forth. Dr. Kaushik received his PhD in economics from BU, Boston University, local, homegrown boy, and has taught at Pace University in New York since 1981, where he is a professor of finance in the Lubin School of Business. Professor Kaushik received the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Award, the highest recognition award given to overseas Indians. Thank you for being here. Next among the panelists is Mr. Vittal, also goes by Vikas, I suppose. So Deshpande, he is volunteer for the Seva USA International. Mr. Deshpande is a Boston-based volunteer of Seva USA International. It's a not-for-profit organization, qualifies for tax-free donations. It promotes selfless service through 38 chapters in cities and towns across the US. Seva's core mission is to serve humanity in distress by offering disaster relief and by supporting development projects internationally. It also helps local communities and causes and promotes volunteerism. In India, Seva volunteers have worked during natural disasters, helping the needy and supporting government disasters-related activities. Mr. Deshpande himself works in the field of environmental sustainability, and he has worked for government, not-for-profit, and private sectors to develop policy and solutions for climate protection, as well as water and sanitation projects. There is much more to Mr. Deshpande, and we will learn more about it during the session, but suffice to say that we are honored to have you as well. Last but not the least, Dr. Rukmini Banerjee. She is Pratham Executive Committee member. She is to my far right. Rukmini Banerjee has been with Pratham since 1996. She is responsible for Pratham's program activities in several major states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, and Assam. Rukmini has been in the core team of the annual Status of Education report since it was launched in 2005, and currently heads ASER Center. The center it conducts a national survey, annual survey of children conducted in every rural district in India. It's the only annual district-level source of information on children's ability to read and do arithmetic. As we all know, primary education has been a major issue in India, and from that standpoint, her work to document how progress has been taking place is invaluable. Rukmini has represented Pratham at many international forums, including the Clinton Global Initiative in New York in 2008 and the Fast Track Global Initiative meetings in Copenhagen in 2009. She has tremendous amount of field experience, and both in program implementation as well as in evaluation, survey, and research. She was initially trained as an economist in India. She did her BA at St. Stephen's College and attended Delhi School of Economics. She was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University and completed her PhD at the University of Chicago. Once again, we are honored to have you as well, Dr. Rukmini Banerjee. And without further ado, I will request Ms. Supriya Sule to give the opening remarks, and you're welcome either standing here or thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be here this morning at the esteemed Institute of MIT for the MIT India conference here. Governance from where it comes for me, because I'm a member of parliament in the Indian parliamentary setup. There are 436 members of parliament represent various states and constituencies in India. And I represent 1.6 million people when I stand here, because each member of parliament has 1.6 million voters. Not necessarily all come out to vote, but that's the voice I represent. And I fortunately sit on the right side of parliament, which is the treasury. So we are in alliance with the Congress party. We are a part of the UPA, which is the United Progressive Alliance. And the NCP has been in alliance with the Congress in Delhi for the last 10 years. And in Maharashtra together also we have alliance. We had alliance in Goa. So we have been in whatever India has progressed in the last decade. We have been worked together closely in making the changes that we have tried to make. I agree that India today is going through a very difficult period. And internationally, our ratings haven't been doing very well. And I think I would take this opportunity in this panel and admit that, yes, things have not gone as well as we'd like them to go in India. And internationally, having one of the best economists to head our government, obviously everybody had a lot of expectations, and governance being an issue. I mean, where I come from, each one of us, I think, comes from a varied background of our work brings us. So each one is going to look at governance very differently. And in a given time of 5 minutes to a politician is very difficult, because once a politician gets a mic, we're not used to leaving it for at least an hour. So for me to speak in 5 minutes is really a challenge. But I think for us, governance is, from where I come from, is to give better systems and make everybody's lives better. I think writing from, I mean, most Indians here, so I would use a connotation of, for every Indian, we need roti, kapda, or makan. You want food to eat, you want clothes to wear, and you want shelter. I think that's really what Indian governance is all about, because every Indian today, or anybody in the globe, really wants the government to give these basic rights to them. And I think India has failed in doing it. We have had a lot of very good flagship programs, but unfortunately implementing in India has always been a challenge. It's probably the diversity of the country, the size of the country, but at the same time, there are a lot of good programs which have been our success stories. If you see the Planning Commission report on governance, I think they've made a lot of interventions in the 12th plan. As you're all aware, India has a 5-year plan every 5 years, which chalks out what kind of spending we should do in the next 5 years and what are the dreams and aspirations of the people of India. And I think governance is on top of the agenda of the Planning Commission. And we are hoping to improve our governance and make better lives for people in India. And I think we are focusing on healthcare, education, giving equal rights to everybody. And there are a lot of success stories in governance. I mean, to give you 2 examples, which we are all very proud of, that yes, India has had a lot of failures. I mean, my friend from Pratham is here, so she'll be extensively talking about India's education, primary education. But I think we've managed to reach schools in every village in the country, which we didn't have. The quality of education may not be good. I think our next step would be quality, but at least access is something what we've managed to get. Talk about health services. We've managed to get health services. We may not have doctors everywhere, but we've managed to get a public health center in most parts of the country. And I think one of the best health programs which we've managed to do well is the polio program. I mean, most of us know Amitabh Bachchan. And whenever he comes on television, whichever language, whichever age group, and he just does this, everybody in India knows it's not a victory sign, but it's 2 boon, 2 drops of polio. And there's a date that comes, and every mother in India who has a child under of 6 will take her child to the public health center. And if it doesn't, it's happened to me. My child was immunized anyway. But because I live within that area and I hadn't taken my child, they came to my home. So I believe that when India, somebody on the top there, wants to implement a program, they can do it. It doesn't really matter what size of the country it is. So it's a very complex issue. I'm sure we'll get more questions from you and get into a much bigger debate. But on the whole, for me, governance is getting good systems in place from the top of the pyramid to the bottom of the pyramid. The basic rights of food, shelter, and right to live is what I think that's what we own up to when we are in the government today. Thank you.
Okay. So then, Kaushik. Yeah.
How do I turn this on? This slideshow.
Okay. Slides.
What
There
do I
must
do?
be a,
There is a remote.
I think it.
Oh, it's already there. Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be back at MIT, but let me first recognize Dean Kothari, Mrs. Shuley, and my panelists, Vikas and Dr. Kumari, and recognize all of you. I was here on this campus 41 years ago as a tourist while studying at Boston University across the MIT Bridge. But I also have another connection. I just remembered that back in '71, I worked as a research assistant to an MIT professor, actually in a housing project. The goal in those days used to be that we should have in the US at least 1.8 million or so new houses built each year, which the country achieved that goal actually 10, 15 years ago. And we haven't moved back forward from that. Actually, we have slided back on the housing situation, as we all know. In any case, I'm very happy to be here. And as everyone these days is mentioning, including Mr. Godrej, that education, technology, knowledge is the key to progress. And of course, we humans have known that for a long time. But only some of us really have followed it in terms of active research and so on. And of course, India has a very rich history of knowledge and producing knowledge. And of course, then Europe took over in terms of research, science, technology. So somehow, I don't know what happened, I happened to realize this 60 years ago, the importance of higher education as a child in a rural village, basically at the age of 5, 6 years. Just noticing only 2, 3 people in the village being important. And the characteristics they had in common was simply that they had college degree, whether it's a school headmaster or the MBBS doctor or the SP and so on. And those were the people important. They still are. And beyond that, everybody has basically, their regular knowledge. So I decided at the time that if I were someday able, I would go for higher education for people, especially women, because I also noticed that women, of course, did certain kind of work and men did a certain other kind of work outside the house and so forth. So that's the background, and the result was that in 1999, we set up this college in the place where I was born, on a 30-acre campus, and you can see the main building on the left, and our hostel or residence hall going up for 500 people on the right side. And then we do the American style, Western style graduation ceremony. And we just did the 11th one on August 30th with some 207 graduates this year. And one of that picture is actually from 2007. And one of the ministers from Delhi being the chief guest. In the center of the picture there. And then we also emphasize right from the beginning production of knowledge, which of course is very difficult in a beginning rural college. Nevertheless, way back in 1992, we had our first international seminar on solar energy, on renewable energy, focusing on solar energy. And a very important person who was a founding member, founding father of the Peace Corps, Richard Ottinger, who was also congressman for 16 years in the US House of Representatives, and then became dean of Pace Law School, is in that picture on the right side, and attending and funding that seminar back in 2002, the very first seminar in January 2002. So we have focused research, which is very difficult to do because it's very difficult to find, as Mr. Godrej said, people to go to the rural areas. Human capital is very scarce in India still, in any case. So that's the point of higher education. Next slide. Where do I go, I guess? Okay. So brief chronology. I already shared that part. And I came to the US, studied here, and I must recognize Dr. Steele, Colin Steele here in red turtleneck, that he was my host family, along with his wife, living here in Wayland, and being a professor at Brandeis University. And I'm very grateful to him and his wife and family. So here is 1970, I am here at BU, MIT, and so forth. 1973, I married an American girl from Detroit in Boston. I married her. And then we visit India several times. And she's taken by children and women and so on in rural areas. And then in 92, I began to fund scholarship in my old elementary and middle school and so forth. But nothing happens there in terms of the apathy and non-doing of the teachers and so forth. So we move forward. And I take a sabbatical. Again, Mrs. Steele was with me in that trip, going to India, traveling around the country, lecturing at about 15, 16 universities, and experiencing India firsthand. And again, reinforcing my idea that this lack of higher education, lack of education of women and higher education of women is really very deep and wide. So I looked into statistics of the Government of India, Ministry of Education, and I found that at that time, 96, 97, statistics from the Ministry of Education, that only about maybe 3% of all Indians had higher education. And when it comes to women, of course, maybe less than 1%, 0.5% across the country, and in some parts, of course, much less than that. So the problem got reinforced, and I resolved at that time to do something about it. And at the end of that trip, at the end of that sabbatical in December 96, basically I decided to go ahead thinking that could the institution survive if I didn't get any help from anybody and just put my own resources. At least a small college could it make it? Yeah. So we went ahead with that decision. Okay, and then expanding, and of course we are in the governance balance, so there are a lot of challenges right from the start. It took us about 2.5 years to get permission, and we're not looking for any government help and so on. So it's very difficult to connect with the local politicians, administrators, because they question you, and the trust is very much missing in Indian society for all kinds of reasons. And of course, corruption is connected with that somewhat, and the whole bureaucratic system and politics. Yes, so we have, we need to connect with the people, with bureaucracy, and resource availability is very limited in terms of local resources, education people and so on. But you have to connect with the bureaucracy and politics and local resources. You have to maximize it. You have to develop goodwill, and you have to identify resources and work with them, basically. So as I say, doing good is not easy, but don't be discouraged, because we certainly have survived 14 years. Now we're in 14th year of and we are going forward, and hopefully we go much stronger. In terms of corruption, obviously there is at the local level. But I have very good news, and maybe this is not a news that typically you hear, that overall we have been able to survive and grow and expand really without any corruption, other than small baksheesh, so to speak. You give, because without it the clerk wouldn't do it. But other than that, I have a good news to report that at least we didn't give. But we did give a lot of time and effort. I have made tens and tens of trips to India and spent a lot of, or maybe wasted a lot of my time. But A, we didn't have it, we don't believe in it, but as a C, we proved to at least ourselves that things really can be done in India without corruption, without giving any money to a politician or a senior bureaucrat. The small clerk, you have to buy them tea, etc. That obviously goes on, and you cannot do without it, more or less. But the corruption, I think you can avoid if you want to. And for all that, it was not the purpose, but I'm very grateful to the Government of India for recognizing all that work and more. So thank you very much. We shall continue.
Yes?
Can I use this one or, okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. First of all, thanks to MIT Sloan School of Management, Dr. Kothari, all esteemed panelists, and all the audience here for inviting and taking part and interest in governance panel. Governance always has two different aspects. One is obviously government, that is taken by everybody. And the other aspect is how to work within the society. I'm here to represent Seva International USA. And one of the reasons I said volunteer, because it's not a one person's task, but it's a huge thing going on, like a movement to help the needy, not only in India, but many other places, including US. So the way Seva, I'm going to give you a very quick synopsis of what we are. So it is a 501c3 based non-profit organization. It's a faith-based organization. There are total 38 chapters in 20 metros, 22 states in the US. The aim is to serve humanity in distress. So we have a lot of projects happen even in US during Katrina, then outside US in Haiti and Peru earthquake, and many projects even obviously in India that I'm coming to the next slide. Then aiding local communities, promote volunteerism is a key thing. Working locally and internationally, what I said right now. Then proactive approach to work with people and government. I mean, one thing is there that always we have concern about corruption and bureaucracy, which is one of the issue. And when I was invited by Senthil from Sloan School, and he said, how do you navigate through government and bureaucracy and corruption? I was little nervous what to say, because honestly, if we are working, you don't find that thing. So low overhead cost is the another important part, which I would like to highlight about Seva. It is about 4% of the total overhead that on which the whole organization runs. About US-based projects, one of the reasons what US-based projects are is that there is always drive by Indian diaspora that we should have something back to India, but at the same time, there is a growing need after first, second generations that we have to do something here also. So Diwali food drive is one thing which we help local shelters. In the past, we used to do during Thanksgiving particularly, but then they started telling that we have too much food during Thanksgiving. Everybody comes and does. So why don't you do sometime different? So we said, okay, we'll start with Diwali. Then Bhutan there were about 65,000 families were displaced and came to US under UN agreement. And nobody knew what to do. So that is another project which we worked on. And we helped US government without spending a taxpayer's dollar to have them settle. Then Get Inspired is a program that we started in 2-3 different metros. We want to start in Boston also, but right now it's in Atlanta, Houston, and Chicago. And under that, we try to do some local work, which will Get Inspired Chicago, Get Inspired Atlanta, so on and so forth. And there is another one is Youth for Seva, which is local needs. But that is not the whole thing. I mean, doing service or volunteerism is not just something serious thing. So we have some fun, some action. So there was, Holi is a very fun festival which everybody likes, regardless of religion or anything. So there was a Holy Cow. There was one event in Atlanta. There were 500 people attended. And there are always Holi. And that is like a fundraising also. Then Yoga Day at Times Square was a very much popular event, which was a very successful event also. Cricket, no matter where Indians are living, they follow and they play. So we have Cricket for Seva. Then once US EPA staff approached us in Ohio requesting that we want to do some service. So they helped us in developing school kids and helping Bhutani kids in that area. And Diwali food drive, as I said earlier. In India, there are about 50 plus projects across the country that we are working on with various organizations. And projects are addressed for disaster relief. Initially, it started as a disaster relief because that is something immediately taken as an attention. As Honorary Godrej said earlier, that when there is a plane crash, everybody pays attention, but not for car crash. So same thing was happening. But then everybody started understanding that disaster is one thing, but if there is a development, health, and education addressed, a lot of things in disaster also get automatically covered. So we started working on that. And we always, it is a volunteer-driven, but always we engage government also. Some of the highlighted projects, not the only projects, but just a representative project. One is Aruna Chetana, where children with special needs are addressed. Then Arogya Rakshak scheme, what Honorary MP said earlier, it is something on that line. It is near her district in Satara, and as well as in Assam. We have about 30, 40 districts covered with local volunteers who are trained to help as a health workers. Then there is an energy need, so these are biomass gasifier that were helped by Seva projects. And school kid travel. In slums and many places, kids don't have anything to carry to school also. And there is a desire even locally to do something, so helping with professional, with companies, and with volunteers, and developed about 30,000 school kits and giving to the slums. That was one of the projects. And finally, just want to highlight one more thing that is very popular and sort of flagship project for us, and that is Yuva for Seva. Yuva for Seva is a summer internship that is offered by Seva and focuses on services project in India and Caribbean countries. It is an opportunity for young adults to contribute their time to larger movement of serving humanity. What I would like to say, I mean, there is one small story that once one grandfather was fixing the puzzle, and somehow all pieces were disturbed. So he asked his grandson that, can you fix it for me? And that puzzle was of the globe. And he wanted to fix all the maps around that puzzle. And that kid quickly fixes in 5 minutes. He said, how did you do it? He said, because on the other side, there was only one face. So I just fixed the face, and automatically globe was fixed. What MIT has today's theme is connection. And connection happens mostly initially through the youths. So that's why I wanted to highlight that so many youths are taking part, and definitely youths and are different. I mean, once they are done their graduation, some are MBAs, some are lawyers. Everybody takes 2-3 months and do something. So Seva is one outlet that I would like to highlight. So, thank you.
Since I'm last but not least, but I don't want to keep you from much more interesting discussion than hearing me speak. Supriya ji said she's a politician, she speaks for a long time. I work with primary school children, so I also speak for a long time. But I'm very glad to be here. Thank you to the MIT team. I work in education, so we are constantly to talk about education. So I'm very glad that you've invited someone like me to participate in a governance panel. And since from Supriya ji onwards, everybody has mentioned education, so I feel it's quite legitimate that I'm here. I work with Pratham. We are an NGO in India. We work on elementary education. Pratham means first, priority. So we think that without education, most things that we want to achieve, none of you would be here if you hadn't learned to read by 2nd standard. Correct? They've forgotten. It was a long time ago. MIT is a very hi-fi place. We work in many parts of India, in about 18 states, in many cities. And one of the things that I think that we are attempting to do is to say that we need very big change in India. We have access. We have schools almost everywhere. We have 96% children enrolled in school, which is extremely creditable, and it's a huge progress for a country like India. But now we need to turn our attention to what is happening in school. And just like if you're at MIT, you expect that the 2 years or 4 years you spend here, every year or every day adds value. Similarly, I think that as we spend time in school, every year should add something to it. Our current figures from the ASER report that we do every year in every district in India shows that by standard 5, about 50% of children after 5 years of school are not yet able to read at the 2nd standard level and are not yet able to do very, very basic math. So unless we fix those things, I don't think a large number of people in India will progress. And for us, I think, as for many of you, the real challenge in India is how do we increase opportunities for all, not just for some, and how do we build capabilities for all. And in the building of the capabilities, I think these basic things really play a very big role. In terms of governance, I was thinking about it last night. We are all required to say something. To me, I think the most important thing about governance is decision-making and thinking about a broader picture than just your own. And this, I think, can be done. Often people mistake governance and equate it with government. I think as citizens, we have as much of a responsibility to think about improving governance as those who govern us. We actually control those who govern us. We are much more powerful in that sense because we can shape who it is, who is in place to help us move along. As Pratham, we work directly in communities. We've got a lot of work with panchayats, with municipal corporations, and also with governments at different levels. But the aim is, as a citizen effort, how do we catalyze the power of the government. Government has scale, government has resources, government has ideas, government needs energy. And so as a citizen group, how do we interact at different levels of government to really get a bigger impact than any of us working alone? My early years, when I started working with Pratham, I was in Bombay for the first 5 years. And my office was actually in the Municipal Corporation's education office. And I think my first lessons of many of these things I learned in that office, working very closely with what was then the Municipal Corporation's education department, and working very long-term in both in the communities in Bombay as well as in, at that point, we had about 1,200 municipal schools. And how do you work together to really get to a bigger goal than you could do individually? I think that's what the aim of governance is. My own home state is Bihar. I don't know if there's anybody here from Bihar. Very happy. There are lots of people here from the south, I'm sure, at least 2 from Bihar. And I would say that perhaps in the conversation, what has happened in Bihar over the last 5 to 8 years, I think is quite interesting, because 10 years ago, people would have totally given up on Bihar. And yet today we find that there are a lot of things that are happening. Much more needs to be done. But the experiences that we have had, and I'm sure others have had in working with governments at different levels, I think I hope that the message that you get from the panel will be one of great hope. There are ups and downs, but if you don't go through the downs well, the up won't be much higher. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, all 4 panelists have given great introduction to their respective topics, and personally, I don't feel like I have been Jim Lehrer or something, in the sense that they have kept themselves on time, and I didn't have to intervene much. Let me begin by asking first question or query to Supriya Sule. Governance, and this question is about governance within political parties, right? So we always, we take pride in the fact that India is a democratic country, and democracy thrives, largest nation with democracy. So I would like to know a little bit about how governance takes place within political parties. Do you feel that there is democracy within political parties? How do leaders rise within the party? Because that's really important in the sense that when I look at the US or England or some other places, there's a lot of competition among the members of within a party, and they compete and with their ideas, I would presume, and then some rise to the top, good or bad, whatever it is, but those are selected leaders within the party by the party membership. So what do you think is the governance in political parties within India, and do you feel that it should change?
Yeah, actually, it's a difficult question because this is not open to the press, is it?
Unless you want.
No, then I choose what I answer. The thing is that in the Indian political system, I mean, if I really ruthlessly look at it only about politics, then certainly, of course, whoever wins, the political parties, we don't run NGOs, we run political parties. And obviously, we want to be in power. And power is not necessarily greed. Power is because you have to look, because unless you have power, you cannot make the changes that you really want to make. So I think power always has a negative connotation, but it's not necessary that power is the way of just greed or just doing the wrong things. And unfortunately, in India, it is looked at it right now with the way the media has been showing all of us. But if you really look at the larger picture, every political party, unfortunately today or fortunately, it's not, you can't compare India to America because we have too many parties. It's not a federal system, A. B, but it's completely transparent. The election system works phenomenally well to have so many people voting at one time to keep it as clean and transparent as possible. So I think, of course, we do need a lot of electoral reforms. But within the party, if you ask me, it really depends on how much of your energy and power you can convert into votes for your party. Because each one of us wants to survive. And we want to be in the government. I mean, certainly every political party, everybody who contests the election wants to win. So it's certainly, and it's not as transparent as anywhere worldwide is. Certainly not.
Let me, Dr. Kaushik, first of all, I want to congratulate you on making a difference by setting up a foundation and starting an educational institution. And as you said, there are many challenges. And you alluded to several of those, but as you reflect on your past, whatever, 20, 30, 40 years in that attempt, in that journey in India, what's the single biggest challenge you would say today if someone were to embark on making a difference educationally in India? What are, as you run the institution, what's the single biggest challenge that you confront?
Thank you. First of all, if you will show up, if you go to the web and show our website, www.helenakaushik.org, the website, the first one, if you click on that, the first website, I don't know if it will open, or you can type www.helenakaushik.org. Yeah, that one.
Well, you're going to make the website answer the question
No.
to you?
No. What I want to say is we publish, like MIT, an annual book where we have the names and details of all the students. And what I was going to say that in the back of the book and also on the website, one of the things I decided, Dean, anticipating this question, is that right from day one, we have kept a chronology of events and people and things we have done, and the people I had to meet and the processes I had to follow to set up. So as an example, as a pathway to others who want to do it, at least we have laid out our story as to the timing and the events and decisions and so forth. That's one thing. Now, of course, 15, 20 years ago, higher education, women's education, rural education was not on the scope in India. Everybody in India, World Bank, USAID focusing, and rightly so, on primary education, Pratham, Ekal Vidyalaya, and so on, because you had to start someplace. Nobody really was thinking of higher education. So one of the challenges, when I went to the chief minister, I went to the education minister of Rajasthan requesting this. They said, higher education, women in a village, what are you talking about? We don't have food, we don't have water, we don't have budget. Rajasthan depends on planning commission money coming to Rajasthan to live on. This is a dream, So, but fortunately now, because of Narayan Murthy, because of Godrej, because of Reliance, showing the path to India, India now finally realizes importance of education, importance of higher education. And one of the immediate impacts we saw in my village, at the time there was only 10th grade high school, 10th grade school, in other words. No opportunity in a wide area for girls to go to college. And I knew that once we open it, that school will be forced by villagers requesting the